GM, and we are live. Cool, let's just wait a couple more seconds while everyone joins in. And for now, I guess we'll roam the Frogland. Cool, looks like people are starting to join in, so could you guys give us a quick introduction about yourselves?
Thank you very much. I'll be happy to hop in here. So my name is Ed, better known as Snoop Frog in Frogland. I'm the Chief
Love the
Executive
name.
Frog. Thank you. Great to be here. Yes, and I've been in the technology space now since about 2013. One of my first few companies built the first self-contained virtual reality headset, which has led a lifelong passion when it comes to all things XR. So, of course, with metaverses now, this is a really fun space to be in. With me is our other founders of Frogland, and I'll pass over to Lollyhops.
Thanks, Snoop. So my name is Lollyhops. I am the community manager producer for Frogland. I've been kind of adjacent to the crypto space for 7 years or so now, and then got to quit my job in November and come on full time for Frogland. And mostly I just kind of make sure we keep community communications to the Frog team and to the game dev studio, and make sure that everything that the community wants and does is reflected in what we produce here.
Cool.
And hi, I'm Don Love, aka Gamabunta, or Daniel. For my sins, I spent a decade in the energy technology space, like building software for that, but ended up making on the side a blockchain education company back in 2017, and then left the energy space to go full-time in blockchain at the end of 2019. Then COVID hit. I mean, perfect timing to be around for the boom of NFTs, etc., and met all these wonderful people, and we started Frogland together.
Cool, awesome. Sounds like Frogland has come a long way. I mean, you guys already have a built-in metaverse where you can go in and explore the little areas. Could you guys talk a little bit more about that and what kind of vibe you're going for inside the Frogland?
Absolutely. It's a great question. For those who can see the stream, we've actually got the Dragonfly Social Club loaded up at the moment. The idea behind the Dragonfly and Frogland itself is effectively to have a metaverse that has the look and feel of the Notorious Frogs, the NFT collection itself. The reason is we've seen a lot of the metaverses out there today have been created before the advent of PFPs. And with that, we've seen how much people adore their own individual characters. And it made a lot of sense for us to develop a metaverse that really looked and felt like the projects that everyone knows and loves. So with that, we wanted to develop this in a new shape or form. Effectively, the traditional method of game development would be putting together a business plan, presenting it to some investors, hoping to convince them on what you're trying to build, enough for them to be able to fund that development process. The problem is those investors don't necessarily want to play the product itself, and they're looking for a quick ROI. So here with Web3, we have a means to have a relationship directly with those who are interested in using the product that we're building. And that relationship has allowed us to co-create a space where effectively building a new metaverse from the ground up, completely from scratch, with a focus on the narrative, the lore, the gameplay, but still having with it all of the Web3 benefits that we know and love in the metaverse of today. So we had this, what we call a frog noir theme, effectively a 1930s, 1940s gangster frog vibe. The space itself is littered with Easter eggs created with our community, with the developers, and ultimately is a space that is built by a community for a community.
Yeah, in fact, I think Bugs often puts it best. He's one of our creatives, both on the visual art side, but particularly on the narrative and storytelling side. We have a lot of focus on narrative. And so we have a very strong surrealist slant, and surreal isn't... surreal is playing with elements of real And, it's very much dealing with real ideas. It's not just complete imagination and fantasy. So the Notorious Frogs are very surrealist, and so that gives us the ability to play around with a lot of these themes you find in the 1930s, 1960s, for storytelling purposes and aesthetic.
Yeah, and on that note, I will add, while we have some of the founders here, in fact, the team is a little bit larger, what we like to call Frog Team 7. And so we have also Shrimp, Anthony, who's better known as in the space, who actually worked with Bugs for quite some time over at Disney, at Lucasfilms. They've had a tremendous track record working on a lot of IP that we all know and love, like Star Wars and Transformers, and are really the driving efforts when it comes to the creative design for this world itself, as well as for the narrative and the gameplay. And we also have Frogzilla, who's one of the concept artists who's been working on the project with both Anthony and Damon, or Bugs and Shrimp, on building out the look and feel for the frogs themselves. And on top of that, obviously, Lollyhops and Gamma Bunty you've met, but we also have Froggy Digital, who's one of the most exceptional Web3 engineers I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. So there's a few members of the space here who have been involved in the Web3 world. We all cut our teeth, so to speak, on Rare Pizzas, the first project that brought us all together and showed us what can be done by working with the community and with Web3 technology. So again, this has very much been a team launch project, but ultimately being able to bring the community in. And with that, we do have a tremendously supportive community. Has been just an absolutely eye-opening experience.
We do have a lot of people joining in. We're almost at 100 viewers, so let's pump those viewers up.
Rub it.
So yeah, it does sound like your team, the team of 7 people, you've got a lot of experience inside of the crypto space and outside of the crypto space. Cool. So like, I guess you can't speak for them, but for those people that were working outside of the crypto space, what made them want to transition into Web3 and NFTs? What made them bullish on what is going on inside of the space right now?
If I may?
Go for it.
Okay, so specifically on the creative side, it's really to do with ownership in the final product, as well as getting immediate community feedback. It really is, the promise of NFTs in community that, for people like Shrimp and Bugs, seems to be a major driver. They have all this experience in Hollywood, and it seems that they're used to dealing with all sorts of double-speaking execs who will, rip the creativity out of a project or quash a project specifically to try and, get to the most vanilla, broad appeal and stuff, and often tear the heart out of it. So there's a lot of passion on that side. I know people like Froggy Digital is on the tech side, and he's been in the space for a long time, and he often says the DAO hack back in 2016 is kind of what drew him into Ethereum.
Okay.
And he works on making unhackable voting machines as his day job, like some really impressive stuff. Who am I missing? Lollyhops and Snoop.
I mean, the team itself, I think, was very attracted to this, having seen what Web3 can introduce and what you can do with Rare Pizzas. It really showed us a great deal about being able to pull people together under a noble cause and achieve great things. So the founding team, I think, were very much of the right mindset when we got together and we wanted to build this project out for the reasons for wanting to build it. But as I sort of alluded to, I think before we started the stream, there's an issue where a lot of the content that we're seeing being created today in the Web3 space is created by Web3 engineers, but not necessarily by the AAA game development studios. Because, of course, those AAA game development studios are too busy making a lot of money making fancy games. And we see this strange resentment from some members of the gaming space who don't quite understand what Web3 and what NFTs can do for the game space. So it took us a good few months of bringing this game development studio, in fact, the former management team from Sony's flagship London studio, who worked on metaverses like PlayStation Home and a lot of Sony's best-selling launch virtual reality content. We had to take a few months to actually teach them the nuances of Web3, of degen culture, of what it is to be in the NFT space. And the penny dropped relatively quickly. So much so, in fact, that they moved off a bunch of other normal Web2 projects they had been working on to focus entirely on this new Web3 metaverse space. So it's really an education process, in my opinion. And as soon as people are aware how this technology can be used from a business side as a mechanism to fundraise and to develop content in transparency with the community of individuals who want to use a product, is unlike anything any game developer has experienced before. And we're seeing more and more game devs now trying to embrace this new transition of the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. So that is an important factor. Now, as these game developers that are able to make incredibly polished content are beginning to pay more attention to the space, that means the overall view and opinion of the content that's going to be created is going to change. And it may take a year or two, much like when virtual reality first came out. We had a lot of the hardcore PC gamers and the gamers throughout the world. They rejected virtual reality. But it's only as of recently, a few years later, when the numbers of virtual reality headsets have surpassed the sales of Xboxes, that people are beginning to pay more attention to it. And eventually it will be embraced and it will be adopted. And I see this as an emerging tech. The gamers themselves have had a lifetime of watching the games that they knew and loved degrade, going from having a cartridge of a game that needed to be perfectly built because you could never update that cartridge once it's plugged into your Super Nintendo or your Game Boy, to this idea where effectively full games are now being released and pre-sold before actually being tested and fully vetted before they can actually be released. So the gamers are quite rightly sort of mistrusting of new technologies until they understand how that's going to benefit them. And I think when you look at traditional games like Fortnite and think how much money kids have been spending to buy skins in there, as soon as companies may no longer want to support that game because it's not profitable enough, that game will cease to be. And with that, any skin, any avatar, any money that's been put in is effectively a sunk cost. And as soon as gamers, I believe, begin to realize that, hang on a minute, if I purchase, let's say, a skin or an item as an NFT, I own that in its entirety. And as and when there's this level of interoperability, I'll be able to move that item from one game world to another, regardless of that game still being in existence. And that is a very powerful thing. And I think this is, again, it's an education process that the game world needs to understand, that this is not a way for larger evil companies to simply screw more money out of the users, but instead it's a way that could enhance an experience and give more control to those gamers themselves. So it's a fascinating space, and I think as people realize, as people get educated on it, and a big focus for Frogland was not to force this project down people's throats, but instead allow people to do their due diligence, find out who's involved in the team, find out who's involved in the development, and make an educated choice on whether they want to get involved or not. Which is why we took a very grassroots marketing approach. We spent nothing on marketing. From creating the project to selling the project out, we made a promise to our community that we're only going to focus on bringing in those people that care the most about what it is we're trying to build. And that has allowed us to build up an incredibly solid community who's, I think, one of the most friendliest and happiest communities I've ever had the pleasure of meeting in the space. Long answer to a short question.
No, I agree. There's so much misinformation about NFTs everywhere around the world. Outside of our little Twitter bubble, when you go on Reddit, when you go on TikTok, when you go on Instagram, it's a lot of misinformation, and I feel like people are hating on it, but they don't really know what they're hating on. And I do believe that eventually, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, I can't predict when it's going to happen, they will eventually find out the true value of NFTs. Because I've seen it, and I think, NFT gaming provides far more value to the customer and to the players than traditional gaming. So in my mind, there's just no way that NFT gaming is going to lose long term.
Yeah.
There are also, rights to like some of the things they see bubble to the top are some of the worst examples, and so you get people hating on things and painting the whole space with one brush. When they're picking out the biggest examples of hype combined with rug pull, and thinking that's everything here. When I mean, you have all sorts of niches from the game side to the fine arts side. You have interesting people like People Pleaser giving everything to charity. You have Xcopy doing really interesting stuff, and Robness. You have games doing interesting new things, and you have communities that are building quality and aren't being extractive or following hype mechanics.
Yeah, I agree. I think people outside the NFT community, they just see the headlines and they assume that's what NFTs are. So.
Well, the thing that I love about it as well is that with this type of setup, using like the NFTs and the NFT community to be able to work on and develop games and be able to kind of give feedback to the companies who previously had been so inaccessible that it would take I mean, the product would have to go all the way to market or get out into a test bed of people, and then you'd have to have that feedback loop, and it was so long. Whereas now, like with this type of setup, like we're talking to the community, I'm talking to the community every single day, and we're able to take that feedback, and even if it's not necessarily feedback, but different ideas, and we can take that and put it in front of the game dev studio and everyone that we have on board here, and see how we can take an idea that like some community member woke up with one morning and really make it real, which I think is a really special part of the process and going to make it a lot more accessible for people who didn't have those types of connections that we do in the space, or even just outside of the space with the game dev studio and everyone that all the Hollywood connections and everyone that we know just through our previous work experience. I think it makes it a really special thing for like the average person and the average gamer to get involved in.
Yeah, it's a great way to make the community feel valuable, and that's something that traditional gaming companies probably would never do. So yeah, but yeah, you guys did mention that you're going for the 1930s gangster vibe, and I can feel it. I can feel it. At first, like it almost felt like it kind of reminded me of BioShock. If you guys know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes, I do.
And I love
Totally.
BioShock.
Greatest game, one of the greatest games ever made.
I agree.
Like it was definitely a something that was mentioned in the process. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it feels great. I love the vibes. It's very eerie, creepy, but like weirdly soothing, especially the music. Are you guys able to talk a little bit more about the music? Like, who's the artist, or is it just like a random track that you thought it was very good and you slapped it on?
I go for it, Snoop. I'll just say it's not random. We do understand copyright, and we're not going to flaunt it because we don't want to get sued into oblivion. We are doxxed, so we do have to care somewhat.
Correct. The real purpose for the Dragonfly Social Club, again, is to become a playground for content creators of all sorts. Certainly the musicians have not managed to crack into the scene as well as some of the digital artists have, and we want this to be an inclusive space for everyone. So with that, in fact, the jukebox that we have here is quite a cool little piece. Now, in fact, what we have is the permission from a band called Too Many Zoos, a wonderful New York street jazz band that makes some absolutely incredible music that one of the founders, Frogzilla, and myself bumped into in person in Union Square in New York while they're giving a live performance. We quickly struck up a conversation, found out that they were new to the NFT space, or they'd heard of but not gotten involved. And that led us down a few month process to educate them more about the space, let them know how audio can be used in something like an online shared persistent space, and asked if they would be willing to provide us permission to play their entire discography of music, which they're very happy to do. So as a way to showcase that, we have two things. There's a nod of the head to Too Many Zoos, which in fact here up on stage we have the instruments. And so these are the models that we put together of the instruments that the band Too Many Zoos uses, from the very funky drums to the sax to the trumpets, everything that they actually use in real life. At a later point in time, we can enable people to come up on stage, click on the mic, and be able to broadcast their voice throughout the entire metaverse. And what I mean by that is we can have multiple instances of the same room with up to about 15, 16 people, or frogs, I should say, within each instance. But this is a metaverse, and with that, audio is as important as visuals. So here we have the track listing, that some of the few of our favorite songs that we felt were nice and Frogland themed, and we can simply walk up here and type in, let's say, for instance, A1. And this will then line up audio and let us have a nice froggy theme while we walk around the bar. So as a way to be able to showcase audio in an immersive environment we feel quite a powerful thing. And as we can open up to now to soon allow live performance on stage, we feel this is a great way for those musicians to be able to come into a space and be able to showcase their talent in a more immersive way. You may notice as I walk around, again, we're really using technology to its fullest extent here. We have what's called binaural audio, or directional sound, if you will. So as we're sat next to the jukebox, we can hear it quite loudly, and we can turn our heads for audio to come through left or right channels. We can even walk away from the music to be able to drown the music out entirely. which is another fun thing that you can't necessarily do on platforms like Zoom and Twitter Spaces, where effectively what is heard, everyone can hear. But in this regard, I could walk up to Don Love and we can have a quiet conversation in a corner without anyone necessarily hearing. And similarly, we could walk over to anyone. And if they're having a conversation, we can also hear from them. But a great thing is actually being able to control what you hear. So here we have Electric Frog walking around like a headless chicken, and I can increase his voice. If I don't like what he's saying, I can mute him altogether. So the idea of giving people the control for what they can hear is a very valuable thing inside the space. But it's not just too many zoos. In fact, we have one of our first legendary frogs, a gentleman by the name of Drummer Boy, who is an absolutely incredible musician, a double Grammy Award-winning artist who created the trap music genre. He has been an active member in our space. And in fact, you can hear him on the radio station itself. I'm happy to even say that he's put together a few Frogland songs for us, which we'll be hearing in the metaverse in the not-too-distant future. So effectively being able to work with musicians of all sorts. One of the next legendary frogs that we're bringing on board is a gentleman by the name of Scott Page. Now, Scott is an absolute superstar, both a business, a tech, but also a music background, having played saxophone with bands like Pink Floyd and with Toto and a whole number of other bands. So to be able to bring on musical individuals to help co-create this space with us in a way that they're not looking to extract ETH from a project, but rather how can they add value to a project. They've all picked up their own frogs. They're all participating in a number of ways. And it's been such an incredible way to be able to bring different artists together into an online shared persistent space that makes this thing so special.
Yeah. And as you were explaining all that, I think NFT music is going to be a major, like it's going to be an explosive phase in the future. I just feel it's coming. And like being able to, showcase musicians that are native to the NFT space and that on that stage, that'll be very, very cool.
Absolutely.
I can see a lot of people attending that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think really the idea here is that this space is going to be iterated on and expanded over time as we add features, pull more people in, make the space bigger as we kind of build out the world. And then there's separately the blockchain side of things, which are people's NFTs and land, and then having those two work streams continue, get more features, develop, become more rich as they start to dovetail together, and then over time merge and be a one continuous experience. Yeah.
Cool. So I have to ask, why did you pick frogs out of all the animals? I love frogs, but I'm just curious.
That's a very good question. So there's a number of reasons. Of course, the metaverse itself is called New Pangaea. And with amphibians being the first creatures to crawl out of the oceans to evolve in a whole new world, we felt that was quite fitting. And of course, with Frogzilla, one of our concept artists and one of the founders of the team, having a lifelong love of frogs themselves, it made a lot of sense for these notorious creatures to become our focus. So there's more reasons we could dial into, but certainly the premise of a all-around love for frogs themselves. They're such wonderful creatures. They're some of the first things to let the world know if things are changing from an environmental perspective. If the frogs are there, then land is in a good place and is certainly healthy. So there's a whole number of reasons why frogs themselves should be the notorious folk. We also feel that frogs had a bad name with some previous uses of frogs in some capacity, and it's something that we really wanted these lovable creatures to be both notorious, beautiful, but dangerous.
There's another side of that as well, with frogs in particular that I want to point out, because this has been something that has been brought up actually a lot when people are looking at the NFTs. So frogs are actually androgynous, like they can be male, they can be female, they can also change. So being able to make that reference and be able to be supportive of that inclusivity, I think is really, really important. And that's why, especially a lot of the NFTs, you can see like some of them have a little bit more like clearly male traits, like mustaches, and like some of them are wearing like the suits and ties and all that. And some of them have a little bit more feminine traits, like their makeup and the eyelashes. But the vast majority of them are, it's a little bit more. You can kind of make your own decision when you buy them and you become that frog about which way you'd like that one to go with gender, or leave it as undefined, which I thought was really really pretty special because we got a lot of people at the beginning asking like, oh, like, are you guys gonna be breeding them? Like, how do we tell which one's male, which one's female, so we know which two to buy from our breeding pairs? And we were like, oh no, like we were actually kind of leaning away from that pretty intentionally. So I think that's a very important thing to note.
Yeah, that's cool. And it is a collection of 10,000 Notorious frogs. You can buy them on OpenSea if you want. Not financial advice. Do your own
Not
research.
financial advice.
But yeah, I think the floor is 0.265 right now. So it is more affordable compared to other projects if you're interested in this. Let's talk about the utility of Notorious frogs.
Absolutely. And do we have some utility for you? So the essence is in the name, Frogland. Buy frog, get land. First and foremost, as a reward to our early supporters and people we almost look at as investors, the idea here is how can we enable those people that believed in us enough when it was simply a team without a metaverse demo to build something pretty spectacular. And so the idea here is let's build a metaverse, let's have land around it, and let's give that land to each and every frog holder. So for every Notorious frog that you purchase before the snapshot date, you will be able to then claim a plot of land within Frogland, what we call a lily pad, a personal access domain, and that will have some interesting utility tied to it. I'm sure Don Love could dig into it a little bit more. Of course, these are Notorious frogs that are the founders of this new world. So Frogland is a centralmost district that will have neighboring districts for other projects around it. So I'll pass over to Don Love to give a little more of a deep dive into the utility.
Okay, yeah. So obviously, yeah, there's the 10,000 Notorious frogs as NFT avatar collection. They live in Frogland, which is a land in New Pangaea. So we have our partners like the Gutter Cat Gang, for instance, who are going to be, we're going to be building Gutterville together with them in New Pangaea as a neighboring land to Frogland. So we have soon TM. We have coming land deeds. Which so frogs are getting land deeds, and so different from something like Decentraland or the Sandbox, where it's a particular XY coordinates that is a land on a map. A land deed you're going to be able to use to claim an XY coordinate on a map, but change that later to some different XY coordinates if you want. So in a year's time, if you're surrounded by neighbors, and you meet somebody who becomes a really good friend who's also surrounded by neighbors, and you guys want to be neighbors, and there's no space next to each other, you don't have to go and sell your land and stuff like that. You can instead go, okay, let me actually look at the top left. I see there's some space, and there's enough space for me to move my land there and for him to move his land there as well. So we're doing some different interesting things with lands and also with zoning of lands. So there are going to be definitely different zones, and your land deeds are going to have different zones associated with them. So that's going to be fully revealed soon. We've spoken about parts of it, and we've released the land map from a nature and a topographical perspective. We haven't told everyone where we think all the settlements are in there, because at the moment the community is actually busy giving us their feedback on well, what do you think this river is named? What do you think that mountain is named? Where do you think the settlements are, and what are they called? And we have some ideas in our head, but we want to see if their ideas are better, or if they land on the same ideas. If they land on the same ideas, it's probably pretty good, things like that. And then, so then we're kind of obviously on that roadmap to building up to giving frogs their land deeds, their land. And then from there, opening up some land sales in waves as well to new people to bring them into the community as well, as the funding mechanism for us to continue to build out this space for the long-term future we see.
Cool. So if you do hold the frog, do you get the land? Is it a free claimable land, or are you whitelisted for it's free?
Cool. Yeah, exactly. So frogs get a free land, and lands. So some things we have said, I believe, already are there will be some levels associated with lands, so not all lands will be exactly the same, and also your lands in some areas will be slightly different. So in an urban area, there's going to be more land. There's a lot of reasons you'd want to be in quite a central place, but your lands are also going to be a bit smaller. If you're out in the forest or farmland, you're going to have a bit more space, and depending on what's important to you, you can kind of trade and speculate like that. Then, I mean, very much as with the Notorious Frog avatars, with lands, we're very much thinking on the tokenomics side about how to tokenomically incentivize as well as make fun holding lands or avatars, as well as participating in gameplay with those, if you have them. So there's a bunch of different things to satisfy at once, and yeah, we're keeping that all in mind.
Cool. So is there a land plot that is better, or is it just up to personal preference? Like, would you say urban is better than farmland, or is farmland better than urban?
So when it comes to urban or farmland, I wouldn't say there's better. With other metrics, there will be certain lands that just have access to a bit more space than others in terms of a level 1 farmland versus a level 3 farmland deed. But then there'll also be some other metrics that we haven't yet discussed. So that there's a few different traits that apply to every land deed. So you might have a level 1 land deed and it's not as big as a level 3, but it has some other metric on which it really kicks ass.
Yeah, cool. And on these land plots, are you able to build that out yourself, or will it be pre-built by the team?
So, I mean, that's really going to be an iterative process. And what that means is the simplest implementation to start. But we think the creator economy is really important and what's going to be the lifeblood of this project and so many projects in the long term. So that very much means enabling creator tools for people to do their own building, to be able to sell buildings to other people, etc., so that architects can do really cool stuff and sell that to other people in a marketplace. I mean, so it depends on where in the roadmap you're speaking about. At the beginning, it's likely going to be a few different prefab buildings from ourselves, and then opening that up to other people to build and market to each other. Because really, the more we give tools to creators, the more we attract people who are cool people doing cool things into the space to come and do their cool things with us. And we get far more variety than we could ever imagine or create ourselves. So rather empower awesome people to do awesome things than try and do it all ourselves.
Yeah, cool.
I think that's a really good point to bring up. Sorry. A really good point to bring up is that like what we're trying to do, especially with New Pangea, is make this a platform where creators and artists are empowered and elevated, both with the connections that they can make internally within the community and within our partner communities and anyone who comes in to play the game, but also with other professionals like Soup was talking about earlier with the legendary frog, with Drummer Boy being one of the first like official celebrities, I guess, to come into the space and to be willing to have people like that work with the community members, just people who are like basically like me, like sitting at home, like want to play music, want to do something with music, and being able to work together and then use this as a way to connect with an audience that they might not have had access to, just the same way that NFTs have done that for visual artists. And so I think that's an important distinction or note to take.
Yeah. And with Frogland, do you imagine it being a gaming metaverse, or will it be more of a social hub?
Yes, very much. Oh, well, I'd say it's a bit of both. I see these metaverses today effectively as social media platforms. And I
Yeah.
see a lot of projects will need to have presence in a lot of social media platforms, just as companies have a Twitter account and an Instagram account. I think it'll make more sense for people to have their own brand promoted in these spaces. Because personally, I see this Web3 space as a transition from a two-dimensional internet to a three-dimensional internet. And in fact, everything that you can see in the Frogland Discord, and again, I'd urge anyone to hop in from, you can go to frogland.io to get the link. But ultimately, you can find in there a lot of gamified elements, from a casino that you can play blackjack and poker, to being able to buy chickens and fight them, buy horses and greyhounds and snails and race them. And these are all items that we want to be building out in a 3D capacity as this world continues to grow. So the key here is building not only a metaverse to focus on the content creators and enabling them to do what they do so well, but as well is to bring a gamified state. By effectively having, in the instance of the Dragonfly Social Club, we can see here the murder of Jimmy the Knee, and his ghost will appear every now and again. And this is a story that was created as a live RPG, or an FRPG, if you will, inside our Discord. And so for people to be able to participate in a narrative storytelling and then be able to walk into a 3D environment and see those same elements that they had some say in, then recreated around them, it's a really cool and nice heart-feeling feeling. So to be able to work with game developers who know how to make very cool gaming content, we can really focus on making this not only a space to showcase NFTs and to sell NFTs and to rent your land, but ultimately will be a space that you will be able to go in as a single player and have fun as much as it is a multiplayer experience. So effectively, yes, this is not going to be just a metaverse as a communication platform in 3D. This is also going to be a little gamified space. Let me start to showcase this with small little games and bits and pieces you've ever seen me playing, the sort of dice game. This will be expanded out in a number of capacities as we continue to grow this world. But the idea here is for every project to have their own gamified state, their own lore, their own narrative that will all be intertwined with that of the Frogland narrative. So yes, as we keep adding more projects and as the communities vote to be able to bring in the next partner projects, that will in turn allow our Hollywood creative storytellers to start bringing together the lores and the backstories of this projects. So it's definitely an exciting space, but as we continue to grow, we do want it to become more and more engaging. So it's not simply an empty void reliant on users to provide the engagement and the interactivity, but it will simply be a fun space for anyone to hop into at any given moment.
Cool. Awesome. And are you able to talk more about your partnership with Garter Cat Gang and the Wicked Craniums, or is that got to keep that on the down
I
low?
will say that's certainly slightly further down the line. I can say that we partnered with the Godcat Gang and the Wicked Craniums very early on in the Frogland process. In fact, when we first started this project, I think it was sort of April, May time that we really started the initial planning. The sale then took place in September, sold out in September, and we delivered this world by December. But as you can see, this is but one environment. From here, we'll also be expanding out on the lily pads, the land that users will be able to claim, as well as the communal areas outside of the Dragonfly Social Club and what we call Main Street. So the focus is really let's bring the value to our frog holders first and foremost before we can open this up necessarily to a much wider community. But that being said, we're constantly in discussions with a whole number of partners with a view to be able to bring them in and get that planning stage started, so that again we have a district that will look and feel like other partner projects that are so interested in being able to have a presence in a new metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also worth saying, that's a model that that we're really excited about and is going to pick up speed more and more over time. Where first and foremost we build out a core base platform, which all of these different continents, different areas are being built on top of, including Frogland. And then Frogland has its own twists, its own aesthetic, its own game elements as well, where not all of those are applicable everywhere else. And so then that for Gutterville as well, etc. So these become interesting places where we can express and explore all sorts of different aesthetics, that aren't 1930 to 1960, gangsters, in a noir type place, but have a very different look and feel and sound and emotion and story. But obviously that's the ball picks up on that as the actual core that underpins all those advances.
Cool. So in the future, there will be more themes and vibes than 1930s. gangster.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the gutter cats have their own thing. They have their own vibe. It's what they want to express. We want to help be a medium and a vehicle for them to create a space for their community, and of course, in this universe, we want to be able to interact with that and have all these communities commingle. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the day of cats hanging out in Frogland and frogs hanging out in Gutterville.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna
the
be
cross-pollination
nice.
is a very important thing. To be able to bring
Yeah.
communities together, to have fun together, and to then enhance the story for both communities by bringing two together is a fascinating concept.
Yeah, and I mean, like building a metaverse takes like multiple years. So I'm sure like it's
Well,
not
that's
going to be
exactly
done.
right.
It's not going to be done in like a few months. So
It
it's
really
going to
is
be
not
small
just
rollouts.
Well, yeah, and so that's going to be a really fun thing of like, there are lots of ways and plans for what to release along the way, how to release it, when to show people the progress, keep people having fun, keep people engaged, etc. As we progress towards this live, large environment where people can coexist in what they currently see in their heads, and get there together. Like, yeah.
I
I
mean,
think
Frogland. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, I think you've touched on a good point, because again, when we started Frogland as a project, everything that we did was really to try and find a new way of launching a project. The idea here was we need to build a metaverse that's neither cheap nor is it quick. And so what we needed to ensure is that first and foremost, every available way that we had was going to go towards building an incredible project. And with that, with a lot of NFT projects, you have two options. You can build a wonderful project, or you can market it to the nines. And we've seen through a lot of projects that have existed prior to Frogland, marketing a lot is great for the initial pump, so to speak, but not necessarily the best thing to sustain a continued growth. So we took the choice of let's not pay for marketing. Let's do this organically. Let's use word of mouth and effectively rely on ourselves and the community to spread the word of Frog, as we like to say. Because ultimately that allows us to build a better product. That allows us to build a better community. It is certainly a lot more work and it takes a lot more time. But we're not in a rush. We know this is a space that will be ongoing for quite some time to go. And with that, we're looking to really become this main central hub for a lot of these projects. So by working on building a spectacular project, and within 90 days of selling out the entire project, we delivered a demo to the community to be able to hop into. And I think I'm quite biased, of course, but I think it's a pretty spectacular demo at that. So the community can now see what we can do when we put our minds to it and we just buckle down and we build. And with that, the rest of the community is gradually finding out. We like to say, especially before the release of Frogland and the metaverse itself, we don't ribbit about Frogland, because it's important to us to give effectively our friends and family, the people that we know and love that have been most active in the space, have been attending the events like NFT NYC, Art Basel, the Bright Moments Gallery, visual artists and movers and shakers in the space that we wanted to be able to provide a home for them to be able to showcase their NFTs, their artwork, their audio. And to be able to do that, again, it's a long process to build one of things. But we're now seeing the results of the hard work that we put in so many months ago, gradually now getting the attention of people outside our immediate sort of network. And this is an exciting time, because what we built at Frogland is a new model. It's effectively a way for content creators to fund and to develop content directly with the community, as opposed to relying on the traditional VCs that generally the entire game space and effectively entertainment space has been relying on to fund their content. So again, it's certainly a long process and it's not a cheap one. But that being said, we've found a model that will be able to allow us to scale and to grow with community. And so as the space continues to grow, as will the new Pangea metaverse.
Yeah. And one thing you said just now that really resonated with me is trying to get organic growth behind Frogland. This is a trend that I've seen constantly. Whenever a project is growing slowly, organically, eventually they'll hit a point where they reach exponential growth, whether it's in price or daily active users. And it's just, when it's a high project, yeah, it'll pump a lot, but then after a week or maybe even a few days, it's gonna dump, and then it's just not nice. It's just not nice for the holders, and a lot of people are gonna be left holding the bag. So that's a great approach.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And it's certainly validation because, again, it was hard work and we certainly had a lot of naysayers to begin with. But sure enough, as the floor price pumped to sort of 0.6, whatever it was the other day, and then we continued a secondary as people gradually start finding out more people are joining the community. We're revamping the Discord, we're improving, we're working on an upcoming website. So we're doing all the things that should be done. But again, we're doing it in a more organic and a grassroots method, which we really believe allows us to build up such a foundation for success in the future. There's a few ape holders amongst the founding team who spent a long time studying and analyzing the space and seeing what the apes have done so well, and certainly seeing what could have been improved. And with that, we're trying to raise the bar for any NFT collection. And so with that, there are things we can focus on, and we felt marketing would come organically and allowed us to continue to build and deliver to those people who know about us. That being said, the product has now been released to our frog holders, and so we can certainly start riveting a little bit more about Frogland, and so we're delighted for you to have us on this space.
Awesome. And will this be free to play?
Good question.
I mean, so there would be there are reasons why you would want to own land and want to have an avatar that is either a Notorious frog or from a partner project. And so there'll certainly be advantages and capabilities associated with those. But I mean, at the end of the day, we don't want to hamstring people. We want people to be able to come in and play, make it a full and vibrant space. So I mean, free to play is very much what we are aiming for.
Cool. And will Frogland eventually have its own token?
Ooh, that's
we haven't said anything really about that. I guess I'll say this. We're definitely going to focus our economics on in-game items, whether they have gaming power or whether they have artistic aesthetic, for something you want to hang on the wall, or a bench for your garden, on your land, well, whatever it may be. So very much the economy, we very much want to focus around those kind of items, and we are essentially looking at in-game crafting, shall we say. So there'll certainly be economy, there'll certainly be some elements of play to earn. We haven't revealed details on any particular tokens, shall we say.
It sounds to me like sounds like it's going to be a gamified way to earn a token. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. We'll find out. We'll find out in the future. We'll find out in the future.
Indeed.
That's alpha.
I see. Is this being built on Unreal Engine? So actually, the Dragonfly Social Club, it's using Unity, but it's using Snoop. You want to speak about the lighting pipeline?
Absolutely. So Unity has some incredible developments recently. Certainly Unreal Engine, especially UE5, is an incredibly powerful tool. But given the speed that we're bringing this out, we felt Unity was a great development platform for rapid prototyping. But given the recent technology advancements, sort of URP and HDRP, sort of high definition reality pipeline, gives you this beautiful lighting effect, which we found to be very, very important in this Frog Noir world that we're building. So while it certainly looks like something that the UE5 would put out, it is in fact using the latest and greatest in Unity 3D technology. Again, some of the founders are very, very familiar when it comes to building 3D worlds. Shrimp actually went on and built some location-based entertainment, location-based virtual reality entertainment, where you would put on virtual reality headsets, you'd put on computers, you would hold controllers that would mimic guns or anything, and you could interact with the real world, but in entirely virtual reality placement. So this was a really, really fascinating piece of tech. And when it comes to rapid prototyping, we found Unity 3D by far is the better platform.
Cool. Awesome. Is there a story behind these frogs and Frogland in general? Is there lore?
There most certainly is. In fact, we have an entire codex dedicated to the lore of Frogland. Of course, with some of these incredible Hollywood creative storytellers that we have involved in the founding team, it was obviously a very important thing for us to focus on. You can in fact find a few videos online that shows a little bit of the origin stories for the frogs themselves. But effectively, these frogs were afflicted by a plague, and this plague turned them all immortal. And they, for a long time, were hopping around the forest until one day they stumbled across a dead extraterrestrial with a curved contraption attached to it, plugged into a virtual reality headset. And this contraption, when the immortal frogs had hopped in, sucked them into the metaverse. And with that, they then had to build again. And so what we're now seeing here is effectively the premise of the technology that this extraterrestrial brought down to Earth that these frogs have now hopped into. And with that, each and every frog gained their mortality back, as we can see by the outline of the murder of Jimmy the Knee, and had to face their own mortality. And with that, became somewhat notorious. So this is a quick elevator pitch for the actual lore, but I would urge each and every one of you to check out the Todex that can be found within our Discord to find out as much information as you'd like to find out, because there's a lot there.
So that's very interesting. So when they became mortal, were they humanoid frogs, or were they just little frogs hopping around?
They were little frogs hopping around.
Yeah. So
and
I
then
mean,
they entered the metaverse and became this.
They became notorious.
Cool.
And but really, the immortality up until the metaverse, was a bit of a curse, and they were kind of listless, and they'd been around for too long. But coming into the metaverse is what reinvigorated them. It's what filled them with life and energy and adventure, and where they kind of started running amok and picking up this notorious edge.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. Being immortal, I guess it's not everyone's thing. Maybe these frogs didn't like it. Who knows? Depends on the frogs.
After a long, long time, as a frog, things will get a little repetitive. And to become notorious, to be able to frolic around and to plot and to scheme with your friends and your colleagues, it makes for a slightly better time.
Fair points. Are there any other NFT projects out there that currently inspire you? Like maybe you look at them and they're like, "Whoa, that's cool. Maybe we can implement into Frogland in our own unique way."
There are many projects. We draw inspiration from everything around us, as any creator should. Certainly, the Bored Ape Yacht Club is a tremendous example for what can be done when done correctly in the space. The Gutter Cat Gang, absolutely amazing. The communities that focus around so many of these projects that are just really the reason for these projects to exist are inspiring. So, I mean, I couldn't say there's any one specific project. We really are fans. We're holders for a lot of projects out there. I dread to think how many NFTs collectively the founders have. But ultimately, yeah, we really love this space.
I'll say, what really gets me excited is looking at things like Treasure DAO, DeFi Kingdoms, stuff like that. That is, the early interfaces to bridging the gap between DeFi and NFTs in a gamified way. And yeah, so watching those things closely, and yeah, I find that stuff exciting. And if it's exciting, there are definitely elements of things I want to do.
Yeah, awesome, cool. And I think that's all the questions.
Sorry, that was the fortune teller there. Now myself.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like that's all the questions that I have for today. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add?
I mean, I'll certainly hop in and say one last time that this is a space that's being co-created by a community. So it's not too late. This world is going to continue to be developed. And if you're an artist, if you're a musician, if you're simply an NFT enthusiast, or you like the idea of having land in a metaverse similar to what we now have in front of you, this is certainly the project to hop in. We can see from everything from the words coming from the fortune teller, submitted from members of our community, to paintings on the wall, again, have all been co-created by our community and are being showcased here in the space. So if there's something that you want to see inside a metaverse, if you want to see how world-class game developers build, if you want to be a part of this project as we move forwards, the only thing you need to do is pick up a frog and hop into the Discord. If there's something you want to see and the community gets behind it, and of course it's technically possible, we'll build that. We'll make it happen. So it's a really fun process. I think it's the first time we've ever seen content being created in this sort of a capacity, almost in complete transparency, where every piece of concept art gets pushed to the community for the feedback and the opinions. And with that, this helps us morph and build a space that ultimately our community will be using. So it's a really, really exciting time. And if you really want to get involved in any shape or form, hop into the Frogland.io metaverse and let us know what you're thinking.
Yep, cool. And I'll leave the link in the comment section in case you guys are interested. Frogland.io. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this stream. Thank you to the speakers for joining. It's an awesome project, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out. And thank you to all the viewers for taking your time and taking your time to listen. I'm terrible at outros. They know, but like I think I should tell you guys too. But yeah, thank you for joining, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great night wherever you are.
Good ribbon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks, Professor.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much for having me.